It is a shocking video to see a 14-year-old high school student in Nevada seen swinging two knives at fellow classmates, trying to keep them away. This is before a campus officer critically wounds him with one shot. Officials say the student pulled out the knives. This is after an altercation with another student. A man who identified himself as the boy's father posted this on Facebook. He was being bullied. He is not the kind to back down. He brought the knives because he was going to be jumped. School knew of this and failed to act, so before you run your mouths, know the facts. The Reno police defended the officer's actions.
The officer gave verbal commands for the student to drop the knife, ultimately firing his service weapon, stopping the threat.
And joining us now, the family attorney, David Houston. Before we get into different sides to this, how's the 14-year-old doing, David?
As I understand, in fact, I just received notice that the 14-year-old may have had a stroke, and as a consequence, his condition, of course, is worsened considerably.
Wow. We're sorry to hear that. Well, here's the statement from the school. I want to get that out there and then hear your response, saying this, that every school, this school's district, by the way, school superintendent, every school has a safety plan that dictates clear roles for staff members. Every school has an emergency medical response team trained to react in a split second. Yesterday at Hug High School, both of those plans worked flawlessly, and for that we are eternally grateful to everyone involved. So your response to that statement?
I think the statement's absurd, irresponsible, and premature. There's been no investigation to determine whether or not there had been a flawless performance or otherwise. What we're seeing in reference to this supposed procedure amounts to a school resource officer show up with literally no ability to provide any first aid. It would be the equivalent of in the old days, the school nurse shows up with a box of Band-Aids and a Tylenol. The idea that this young man may have been deprived critical medical care for an extended period is something we're also being tasked to look into, because, of course, no one that really has the answer is talking. But the concept of believing that the policy and procedure requires the immediate use of lethal force as opposed to non-lethal means the officer had available puzzles me to suggest that that is a flawless procedure, because it has to be a rule starting out that we don't shoot our children. The question becomes then, did this situation present an opportunity to avoid lethal force? And what we do know from the video is the 14-year-old was essentially screaming to everyone, get away from me, stay away from me. This does not represent an active, aggressive assailant. For the officer to fail to use other methods of attempted control, firing a lethal weapon at that point, suggests to me that perhaps the policy and procedure is exceptionally flawed. I would give the officer the benefit of the doubt pending some sort of investigation. Unfortunately, that does not include whitewashing the situation by declaring all is well, the procedure was flawless. That's why I believe that statement to be irresponsible.
I believe the investigation on their side is ongoing. What more do we need to know? What led to this? What can you tell us?
As I understand it, what led to this was a series of events. The young man had been bullied and, in fact, beaten the day before, with a promise that if he returned to school, he was going to be beaten again. It seems as though from the video, a number of students had been notified that there was going to be some sort of beatdown that everybody could get together and film so you could post it on YouTube or Facebook. And that's why there seemed to be a number of students present with their phones out ready to videotape. What is apparent on the video is prior to this young man producing any knives, someone had beaten him because he was bleeding profusely from the nose and the mouth. What you then see is the young man produce the knives, waving them in the air, screaming at people to stay away from him, stay away from him. When I hear the superintendent make the statement in reference to ultimately lethal force was used, we have to then consider the video and the timeline. The commands given by the officer at best were vague. The first command occurs, then a second or two later, this second command, of which, again, is vague and difficult to discern. But more importantly, it's a total of maybe 4 to 5 seconds of interaction before the officer fires his service weapon and essentially attempts to execute this kid.
Hey, David.
I think there were so many other options available.
All right. Well, I'm sure the investigation will continue. We'll continue to take a look at this. David Houston, family attorney, representing their side. We also had the statement from the school superintendent as well. We're definitely going to stay on top of this. David Houston, thanks again for the time. Appreciate it. All right. Now this.